This is the VOA Special English Education Report. We had a question from China, from a listener who wanted to know about John Dewey. John Dewey was an influential thinker and educator. The New York Times once called him America's philosopher. Larry Hickman is director of the Center for Dewey Studies at Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. He was not surprised that the question came from China. Mr. Hickman told us he just returned from 2 weeks of meetings in Beijing in December. He and Chinese educators discussed the close relationship between Dewey's ideas and those of Confucius. He also worked with a group of Buddhists who like Dewey's work very much because it goes along with some of the ideas of Mahayana Buddhism. John Dewey described his ideas in books including Democracy and Education, The School and Society, and How We Think. Mr. Hickman said Dewey was perhaps the best-known philosopher, educator, and public intellectual of the 20th century. He was active in many fields, including education, philosophy, psychology, and humanistic and humanitarian affairs. He was an important influence in the founding of the American Association of University Professors and the American Civil Liberties Union. He was also influential in the founding of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, although he himself was white. John Dewey was born in Burlington, Vermont in 1859. He was influenced by the scientific work of Charles Darwin. He was also influenced by the work done with immigrant English learners in Chicago by Jane Addams. She was a social worker and the first American woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize. And Dewey was influenced by observing his own children. At the University of Chicago, he founded the Laboratory School. But Dewey would likely have disagreed with many current practices in American education, like the wide use of standardized testing. Larry Hickman said Dewey thought that testing had its place, but that testing should be more like medical tests. They should be testing for individual needs, interests, and abilities, and not to compare one student to another. John Dewey died in 1952. But Dewey scholar Larry Hickman says his ideas are still being taught in education schools. And that's the VOA Special English Education Report.
This is the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. Soybeans are eaten by people and fed to animals. Some farmers grow them to replace lost nitrogen in the soil. Soybeans were first grown in Asia thousands of years ago. Now scientists have a full genetic map of the soybean. This is the first genome completed for a member of the legume family. The genome will make it easier to target different qualities and develop improved crops. Sequencing the genes, organizing all of them in order, will save many hours of searching. It will make it easier to search for what each gene is responsible for. A report on the genome appeared in the journal Nature. Scott Jackson at Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana, helped lead the study team. He says the kind of soybeans they studied have 46,000 genes. Between 70 and 80% of them, however, are copies of other genes. Some genes change or disappear over time. But Professor Jackson explains that soybeans have kept copies of most of their genes. This is fairly unusual for plants, he says, and extremely unusual for animals. Genes are organized along chromosomes. These contain molecules of DNA, the building blocks of life. The researchers found that the sets of chromosomes in soybeans have copied themselves at least twice. It happened almost 60 million years ago, and again 13 million years ago. Over time, genes develop changes known as mutations. Scientists can tell when these changes happened. The number of mutations over time helped the team estimate when the duplications in soybeans took place. The genome could help genetic engineers develop soybeans that are processed better by farm animals. Soybeans contain chemicals called phytates. These prevent the absorption of phosphorus in the diet. Pigs and chickens especially are affected. Undigested phosphorus in their waste can pollute water supplies. Genetic engineering has already reduced phytates in soybeans. Now, with the gene map, there could be further reductions. The genome could also help farmers avoid Asian soybean rust disease, a highly destructive fungus spread by the wind. The researchers say they found a gene for resistance to this disease. Now they have to find a way to use it. And that's the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. You can find transcripts, MP3s, and captioned videos of our reports at voaspecialenglish.com.
This is the VOA Special English Economics Report. In June, more Americans than expected lost their jobs. Job losses had fallen every month since January. The news raised questions about the strength of progress toward economic recovery. Unemployment is at 26-year highs. The jobless rate in June was 9.5%. That is already a lot higher than President Obama's advisors had predicted for later this year, even if Congress passed a stimulus bill. Congress did that in February with the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. It contained $787 billion in spending increases and tax cuts to strengthen the economy. That bill was a compromise between calls for more spending and concerns about the rising national debt. Most of the money has yet to be spent. But already, some lawmakers and others are saying the economy might need more. No one in the administration is talking about a second stimulus at this point. Those were the words of Rob Neighbors, Deputy Director of the White House's Office of Management and Budget. He told a hearing in Congress in July that the administration is mainly concerned with the current recovery plan. Still, even President Obama left open the possibility when he signed the Recovery Act into law in February. Mr. Obama said he did not want to pretend that the act marked the end of the country's economic problems. One concern is the possible effect of additional spending on the budget deficit. This year's federal deficit is already predicted to be the highest in relation to the economy since World War II. Laura DeAndrea Tyson is on the President's Economic Recovery Advisory Board. She suggested that the administration should plan for the possibility of additional aid. Rob Neighbors told the congressional hearing that she did not represent the administration. The Government Accountability Office reports that state and local governments have received $29 billion so far. It arrived quickly, but 90% has gone to health care for the elderly and education programs. Only a small part has gone to bridges, roads, and other infrastructure, projects that can put people to work more quickly. The report led Republicans to say the recovery plan passed by Democrats is failing. But members of both parties have suggested they might support new stimulus measures to end the recession. And that's the VOA Special English Economics Report. This is the VOA Special English Education Report. For 10 months, we have been talking about coming to study in the United States. This week, we complete that series and repeat some of the advice. You should begin planning at least 2 years early. Decide what kind of school interests you, big or small, city or rural, public or private, 2-year or 4-year. 2-year colleges, also known as community colleges, have not always gotten a lot of respect. Yet they are the largest part of the American higher education system. They often serve older and part-time students and those needing special help. But other students begin at a community college to save money, then finish at a 4-year college or university. In July, President Obama announced a plan to invest $12 billion in community colleges over the next 10 years. The goal is to help an additional 5 million students earn degrees or certificates. The president said jobs requiring at least an associate degree are expected to grow twice as fast in the coming years as jobs requiring no college experience. To help with your college search, try to attend education fairs and visit an Education USA Advising Center. You can find the nearest one at educationusa.state.gov. Also, visit school websites and sites where students share their experiences, like College Click TV and Zinch.com. Apply to at least 3 schools. Make sure they are accredited. To do that, go to chea.org. As soon as you are accepted, make an appointment for a visa interview at an American embassy or consulate. The State Department says it is working to reduce visa delays that have affected foreign science students and researchers over the past year. Financial aid can be limited for international students. To reduce costs, you might look into online classes or a foreign campus of an American school. During our Foreign Students series, we also talked about student life in the United States and programs to help international students. For example, writing centers can help teach the rules of American academic writing. All the reports in our series, including programs on admissions tests, can be found at voaspecialenglish.com. Thanks to everyone who sent us questions. If you have a question, we might answer it in a future program. Click on Contact Us or write to special@voanews.com. Be sure to include your name and country. And that's the VOA Special English Education Report.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Do American children still learn handwriting in school? In this age of the keyboard, some people seem to think handwriting lessons are on the way out. We asked a literacy professor at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee. Steve Graham says he has been hearing about the death of handwriting for the past 15 years. So, is it still being taught? He said, if the results of a survey we had published this year are accurate, it is being taught by about 90% of teachers in grades 1 to 3. 90% of teachers also say they are required to teach handwriting. But studies have yet to answer the question of how well they are teaching it. Professor Graham says one study published this year found that about 3 out of every 4 teachers say they are not prepared to teach handwriting. He said some teachers teach handwriting for 10 or 15 minutes a day. Others teach it for 60 to 70 minutes a day. Many adults remember learning that way, by copying letters over and over again. Today's thinking is that short periods of practice are better. Many experts also think handwriting should not be taught by itself. Instead, they say it should be used as a way to get students to express ideas. After all, that is why we write. Professor Graham says handwriting involves 2 skills. One is legibility, which means forming the letters so they can be read. The other is fluency, writing without having to think about it. The professor says fluency continues to develop up until high school. But not everyone masters these skills. Teachers commonly report that about 1/4 of their students have poor handwriting. Some people might think handwriting is not important anymore because of computers and voice recognition programs. But Steve Graham at Vanderbilt says word processing is rarely done in elementary school, especially in the early years. American children traditionally first learn to print, then to write in cursive, which connects the letters. But guess what we learned from a spokeswoman for the College Board, which administers the SAT college admission test? More than 75% of students choose to print their essay on the test rather than write in cursive. And that's the VOA Special English Education Report.
This is the VOA Special English Development Report. If you travel by bus in Sao Paulo, Brazil these days, your vehicle may be powered by hydrogen fuel cells. The city's urban transportation system recently launched the first of up to 5 hydrogen buses. The hydrogen reacts with oxygen to produce electricity and water. The bus uses a hybrid system that combines the hydrogen fuel cells with high-power batteries. It can be driven 300 kilometers on the hydrogen cell and an additional 50 kilometers on its batteries. The bus carries passengers in communities around Sao Paulo. The United Nations Development Program, the World Bank, and other private, public, and international groups supported the project. Project official Carlos Zunt says the bus is the first of its kind in Latin America. Mr. Zunt says the vehicle releases only water vapor and is totally clean. Traditional buses that run on diesel fuel release harmful carbon dioxide and other pollutants. Most buses around the world run on diesel fuel. Mr. Zunt says diesel vehicles are the main cause of air pollution in Sao Paulo. The cost of the bus has not been announced. Hydrogen fuel cell buses cost more than traditional buses. But Mr. Zunt says reducing air pollution and acid rain will reduce respiratory illnesses for people in the city. In addition, the new bus is very quiet and does not produce noise pollution. Mr. Zunt says a hydrogen bus will last an average of 20 years, while a diesel bus can be used for 5 to 8 years. Sao Paulo has almost 20 million people. Almost half of them ride buses every day. Brazil has a large, modern, and competitive bus industry. It is one of the top producers in the world. The project hopes to export hydrogen fuel cell buses in the future. A Brazilian report says that Brazil is one of 5 countries that have developed such buses. The others are the United States, China, Germany, and Japan. But not everyone sees the hydrogen fuel cell bus as the hope of the future. Critics note the high cost of producing hydrogen, and they say other kinds of energy choices can provide power for buses. And that's the VOA Special English Development Report. Transcripts and podcasts of our reports are at voaspecialenglish.com.
This is the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. Companion planting is the idea that when some crops are planted together, they help each other grow. These compatible plants generally have similar needs for nutrients, soil, and moisture. Advice for companion plantings is sometimes based more on tradition than proof. But Fabian Fernandez at the University of Illinois says there is evidence for some combinations. These can lead to better crops, reduce disease, and help with pest control by attracting helpful insects. For example, some kinds of soil bacteria take nitrogen from the air and make a form that plants can use. The plants keep the nitrogen in their roots. Legumes are especially good at this. Any crops sharing the same space can get the nitrogen as the roots decompose. Crops like beans and potatoes can also share territory well because their roots reach different levels in the soil. Deep-rooted vegetables get nutrients and moisture from lower down, so they do not compete with shallower plants. But some plants placed together may harm each other's development. For example, tomatoes do not like wet soil, but watercress does, as the name suggests. So you would probably not want to put them together. Even after harvest, some kinds of produce should be kept apart. Apples, for example, release ethylene gas, a plant hormone. It can cause other foods to ripen quickly. Fruits that release a lot of ethylene also include apricots, melons, and tomatoes. Vegetables easily affected by ethylene include asparagus, broccoli, cabbage, and cucumbers. Markets often separate high ethylene producing foods from those that are sensitive to the gas. But sometimes you might want them together. For example, if you put an apple in a bag with a green banana, the banana will be ready to eat sooner. Now, what about peaches, plums, and nectarines that are too firm to eat? Growers in California answer this question at eatcaliforniafruit.com. They say an apple, banana, or a riper piece of fruit is not needed. The peaches, plums, and nectarines themselves release enough of the gas to ripen successfully. Their advice: place the fruit in a fruit bowl or in a paper bag with the top folded over. Keep the fruit at room temperature, out of direct sunlight. When the fruit is soft enough to your liking, either use it or place it in a refrigerator to stop further ripening. And that's the VOA Special English Agriculture Report, available online at voaspecialenglish.com.